Mm. Hi, good morning, everyone. So I'm Ria. I am a paediatric ST4 and I'm currently working at Queen's Hospital. So the objective of this talk is kind of to unpick some of the common anxieties that you guys were describing just now. There will be some talks very specific to pick these aspects further, but this is just kind of like a general talk. And I guess I'm starting off kind of similar to Emma. So, you know, how might you be feeling right now? You might be feeling ready. You might be feeling sick of being an SHO, particularly in the postnatal region. You might be terrified, you might be excited. It might be a mixture of those emotions. And I guess what I'm trying to show you is how was I feeling? I was feeling excited, nervous. Am I prepared enough? So it's exactly the same thing. We're all actually being in your shoes. And this talk is kind of show we all share the same emotions, so you're not alone with how you're feeling. So the benefits, we've kind of touched on this briefly, but we were saying bye-bye baby checks, bye-bye TTAs and discharge summaries, but you can see ... with them because you don't completely lose that. And hopefully in pediatrics, we're less hierarchical and you do help out and muck in sometimes. You get to do clinics, which is kind of a new style of working. You get professional progression and more responsibility, which I've put in brackets because this might be a good thing or a bad thing for you. There's a lot more independent thinking. You feel it shouldn't be like this, but you are more listened to by nurses, by your consultant team, by parents. You get to lead ward rounds and you get to lead resuscitations. And again, I put that in brackets because that might be a positive or a negative for some of you guys. Now, the downsides is responsibility, particularly in out of hours. And I think Dan's going to speak to you about dealing life as a registrar, particularly in night shifts. And then you're that person that everyone's going to for resource problems, difficult communications, if they couldn't get the cannula in, if they need senior reviews, everyone's coming to you for every problem. And hopefully we'll give you a bit of tools to how to deal with that and keep your cool. But yeah, you can expect it, but hopefully you won't be too overwhelmed by it. So some of the common fears for new registrars, which we've touched upon already, is those difficult procedures. Oh my God, what if I can't get that cannula in? What if I can't intubate this child? Leading the team and dealing with the workload and the allocation. So dealing with the workload is not actually just the volume of your physical jobs on the ward workload, but sometimes it can be dealing with your team members as well, because we have to admit, there might not always be the most hardworking people or different personalities on your team, and you need to know how to deal with that. And also you need to take yourself out of the SHO role. So we're all really good at doing those jobs on the ward round, ticking off the boxes, coloring your box, however you want to do it. But now we need to take a step back and make sure we oversee everything and don't rush in to do all the jobs. Dealing with emergency situations, sick children and death, and safeguarding. So yeah, I'll touch upon some of these, but you will get specific talks of some of these as well. So the myths, you need to know everything. You need to do everything. You need to know how to do everything, and it's all down to you. So you need to know everything. Absolutely not. But can I just say, you're probably the smartest you'll ever be at the moment with you guys just completing your RCPCH. You've just done your examinations and you're probably at the peak of your knowledge at the moment. It's just about putting it into practice now and just being safe, but we'll hopefully give you some tools to how about going about that. You need to do everything. Absolutely not. This is what this talk's about. Please try and take a step back and see everything and delegate. You need to know how to do everything. No one knows how to do everything. Talk to your other team members. Take some time. If everyone's coming to you like, oh, we can't get that cannula, take your time about, okay, what do I actually need to prepare now to make this chance or opportunity a higher success rate? Or, talk to a consultant, find the resources that helps tell you how to do that procedure. Oh, okay, don't worry. And it's all down to you. Absolutely not. Medicine is not a one person, profession, it's a team profession. So you will have people around you. It's just about knowing who is around you and how to use them. So what can you do to help prepare you for being a registrar? So right now, you can listen to this talk. You have the T2L course handbook and Trello. If you're not already doing it, step up. So that means take hold of the registrar bleep. Obviously, it depends who's on with you, and it might seem like it's a scary time, even if there's loads of patients to come in with just the change of weather. You'll notice there's lots more patients, but actually it's fine, because you need to just get a feel of how it feels to get bleeped or taking calls from GPs and referrals, and you'll have your registrar there to say, I've just taken this call, is it okay if I accept them so and so? And so it's just good to start hearing what people will throw at you. If you're in a specialty at the moment, I would still say try and hold the bleep, because again, you're taking the referrals, and it's just about the vetting process. Talk to your ST3 and ST4 colleagues. So I'm sure you all have buddies, talk to them. There'll be a mixture of emotions, but it's just to help show you're not the only one. And as I said, we've all gone through it. Read through your APLS and NLS guidelines. And actually, if you haven't renewed it yet, which I'm sure you probably have because of ARCP, but I found I had to renew my APLS just before becoming ST4, and that really helped with me feeling like a bit more like a leader and being a bit more on top of it. But if you haven't done it recently, just go through your guidelines again and make sure you've got a hang of what the major emergencies are, kind of how to initiate management. And don't worry, there'll always be protocols around the emergency department on the wall to find. Download the apps, which I'll show you a page of the most useful apps to download. And then at induction, familiarize yourself with guidelines and protocols. And this will be including local ones as well as the emergency ones. So each hospital has their own set of protocols, and every hospital has, I don't know, some might have more than others. And for those that might not have as much as you hoped for, there are definitely emergency protocols elsewhere, and I'll show you where to get those from. Identify your support network. So just see how your system works. So as I said, I'm currently at Queen's. We're fortunate enough, but it also reflects how busy it is, that we actually have 3 registrars on at night, and just the paediatric side. So we have a PAU, an emergency department one, as well as the ward one. And so, we can always pull the PAU reg to come and help us. It might be that you have just a neonatal team and 1 pediatric reg, then know who's on, create like a night shift group. So you can say, if we have a recess call, please can you come down? Or if we put a second call out, please can you definitely come down? And then let the consultant know your level. So, every trust, they might be employing ST4s to ST8s. They generally do know who's the new ST4s, but just to remind them, by the way, I'm a new registrar, I'm ST4 level, so I might be calling you a little bit more than usual. And they anticipate this, to be honest. So honestly, don't feel silly about it. And just as Emma said, you'll find even in yourself, you're making a lot more calls at the beginning of ST4 in comparison to later in ST4, but you'll see yourself grow. So knowledge is SPR power. So this is where I was saying, recap on your basic pediatric and neonatal knowledge, your bread and butter cases. So read back on your BTS guidelines of asthma exacerbation, what requires an admission for your bronchiolitis babies. And then this is what I was talking about with the great external resources for guidelines. So Cats in a Hurry guidelines, NTS websites, that's for your neonatal guidelines, STRS, which is the Evelina version for South Thames, again for emergency guidelines. And a nice one is the British Inherited Metabolic Disease Group. So this is specifically for your metabolic kids, just in case the parents have forgot to bring their own emergency plan in. You can quickly just go into this website. There's the guidelines part. You just have to sign something to say you're not a robot, and then you can type in their condition and it tells you how to initiate management. So it's really, really helpful and a great website to have in your pocket. As I said, renew your APLS and NLS, or just touch upon the guidelines. And if you can, sign yourself up to some courses. So cranial ultrasound courses, leadership courses, RSM, RCPH, London School of Paediatrics, just as Emma's touched upon. If you're doing cranial ultrasound courses, I would actually recommend try and do it before your neonatal post, because you learn it and then you get to throw it into practice straight away. Because sometimes you just forget if you've done pediatrics first and then you go into it, but nevertheless, it's very, very useful. So this is the page with all the different apps that I would recommend. So I'm sure many of you probably have these already, but from the left, we've got Neomate, which is just excellent for emergency drugs. If you guess the weight, or guess the weight, you put gestation, it tells you roughly the weight, it tells you intubation, emergency drugs, how to manage multiple things, including IV fluids. If you guys look in the clinic section, there's actually the growth charts that you can use in there. And I actually don't have growth charts because I just use growth charts from Neomate. Next is pediatric emergencies. I think you have to pay off like a really under £10 something one-off payment. And then it has like every pediatric emergency, which you could just bring up on your phone straight away, which is fantastic. Billy app is, as it says, it's how to plot the bilirubin level, which is super useful, and it has different gestations. Induction is for those who, if you're trying to call another hospital or within your own hospital, you're trying to find different numbers for everyone. Growth charts is growth charts. Mercy burns is, it helps you calculate the percentage of burns. So it's a very specific scenario, but obviously useful because we hardly do it and we get a bit lost with that sometimes. And then you have microguide, which is fantastic because, to be honest, even if microguide doesn't have your own hospital trust guidelines within it, so this is, it tells you what antibiotic to use according to what infection of what body system or suspected sepsis. So it's really useful for that. And it actually has antibiotic guidelines and when to test the next antibiotic level and things like that. So not every hospital has microguide, but even if they don't, I would recommend to download it because it still gives you kind of an idea of what antibiotic to use per each body system. And then iArrest, it's actually an app particularly for cardiac arrests. And the usefulness of this is if you're finding yourself in a panic and you don't have someone to do timings for a cardiac arrest, you switch on this app and straight away it will start your time clock and it will buzz at every 2 minutes to remind you it's time for a pulse check, it's time for a restarting of a cycle. So it's just really good if you don't have hands on board or someone's not got the time clock on straight away. Being a leader. So obviously knowledge is power, but you need to know how to be a leader. It's not all about power. So remember the qualities that you looked up to when you looked at your favorite registrar, and we're all different types of regis, and you might want a mixture of all these different types of qualities, these different regis. It's up to you. But as Emma said, generally try and aim to be approachable, able, and accessible. You will have SHOs from a variety of skill mix. You'll have from F1s to GPs to ST trainees. And I've said invest early in them. And what I mean by that is if you get your SHOs who they try and do the heel pricks and they keep getting potassium of 9, which we all know has happened before, maybe you should take time, even if it's a crazy ward, just take time and show them how to do a really good heel prick and show them the tricks and tips up your sleeve. Show them how to do a wheeze review, show them how to do a fluid status review, and then maybe ask, go through a few of them with them, and then you will know that person now has confidence, or you have confidence in their review, so you don't have to keep double checking everyone every single time. So this is what I mean by invest in them early and be patient with them. Show them the skills that you would like them to acquire to be a good SHO of yours. Give feedback. I think this is really nice because you're now in that position where you can tell them how to be a good SHO, and we need to learn how to be positive and constructive, and this is a skill that we will enhance during our role of now becoming a leader or being in a more senior position. And I think we can all reflect on thinking, I wish I asked my reg how they thought I did in that history taking, or if there's anything more I should do. And I'm sure we've all appreciated it when our reg actually took time to give us feedback. So do that for your SHOs, and they will love you and they will improve as you do that. Communicate, communicate, and communicate. So what I mean by this is, this could be an emergency setting, this could be in the ward. You need to communicate with your juniors, with your nurse in charge team. Let them know the plans. And let your juniors know the priority jobs or priority patients, because you now have the skills and knowledge, even though you don't think you have it, you do. You have the knowledge of thinking that child is sick. That is then a priority job. I need to get that scan done more quick than, oh, that blood needs to be done, or that fluid review. So just communicate with your juniors what the priorities are, because they may not always understand what jobs need to be done first. They might just do what they feel more comfortable with, like, oh, let me sit down and do this discharge. So no, communicate your priorities, tell your nurse in charge the plans, because they might not always understand the rationale for things as well. And that's where your communication becomes very, very important. We've spoken about this already quite a lot, but delegate and take yourself out of the SHO role and oversee things. You may want to kind of jump in and do things, but actually you need to give them a chance to grow. And you kind of, it sounds a bit snobby, but you kind of need to reserve yourself for things that only a registrar can do. And you'll start to see, okay, only I can do those senior reviews, only I can have those difficult conversations, etc. So you do need to start doing that. I've put micromanaging in brackets because no one likes a micromanager, but obviously you can start to judge your team, and you'll need to know who requires a bit more support in comparison to other team members. And then look out for others' well-being, because that's your part of being a leader now, but look after yourself as well, and always ensure that you have a break when and if needed. Right, specific scenarios. So cannulation and intubation. So first, identify your useful aids. So this is, I know this is more geared towards cannulation, but obviously touches about intubation slightly. So you might have preferred cannula types that you know you love, Charcot's, First Net, Neoflons. Find the vein finder, know where it is in your hospital, in your department, and have patience, because if they're all coming to you now for this cannula, that means people have previously been unsuccessful. So you need to try and think, how can I increase my chances of being successful? So, use the warm glove, get someone to warm the hand, use your old school tricks, get everyone you need. So, you might need 3 people. That might be a child who is flailing about, they're really strong. This is the time you see their strength. We all know that. Get the play specialist involved, have that distraction present. You need to get as many people as you want, and people will support you. It sounds terrible. This is one of the cases people will listen to. You'll be like, I need help. I need people here to help with this cannulation, and people will come. Be where you need to be. Get to that place with good lighting, okay? Don't just deal with it in a dark room. Go where you need to be. Identify who else can do it. So it's not always going to be just you. If you're really busy, ask the nurses, know your advanced nurse practitioners, other registrars, whether it's the other pediatric registers available, whether it's the NICU team that are available, and anesthetics. Don't forget your other routes. If you have a suspected sepsis child, for example, get it in with your IM first. If it's a really sick child, don't forget about IOs. If it's just with fluids, don't forget about NG tubes to resuscitate with dialyte or whatnot. And if it's a neonate, don't forget you can go straight for an umbilical line sometimes if you're really struggling for access. And then regarding difficult intubations, we can all bag a mask now, and actually now it's in the guidelines that we can use an LMA. Okay, specific scenario about resuscitation. So document. If just document it. It will be so useful when you look back, and if there's like a hearings later and things like that for the coroner or whatnot, or if it's the SI, have someone to scribe or timing, and use IRest if you don't have someone for timing, and check over it, because let's face it, the person who's most likely you've delegated to scribe is likely the junior, and so it will be useful just to look over to check that the pertinent points are there. Make it clear who the team leader is, and some places actually have a band, or just put your hand up and say, hi, I'm the pediatric registrar, I'm the team leader. Sometimes you'll realize your consultant comes in halfway, it gets a bit messy. Just talk to them, just be like, oh, by the way, Do you want me to continue to be team leader, or do you want to take over? And they'll realize actually this is your opportunity. That's the greatest time to be the team leader, because you have that consultant support next to you. Stand at the end of the bed if you are leading. We all have the tendency to want to, jump in, help with the jobs, but no, you need to oversee everything at the end of the bed. Introductions and knowing who everyone is, knowing their names, and delegating clear roles is extremely important. You'll find, obviously, when you say someone do this, it's really chaotic and things. If you know someone's name, so-and-so, can you please do this? That person's doing that one job. Call for help early if for some reason your anesthetics teams are not out there, or your consultant and you're worried about this child, or if you need more hands on deck, put that second crash call out, because your other team members should know, oh, that's the second one gone out, they need help now. And this will come with skill. De-escalate when you can. So when you feel a bit more comfortable, you'll know that anesthetics will come to each crash call. You can de-escalate anesthetics when you feel comfortable, and also get that child out of the resuscitation room if that child is stabilized and not a true resus call. Your nurses will really appreciate it, and it will be saved for when the next resus call comes in. But that would take time and comfortability and experience. Right, dealing with death. So I've said watch the presentation because it's going to be, a complete talk on this. So I'm not going to touch on this very much at all. Know where your trust keeps the paperwork for this. That each trust definitely has like a whole performer for child death. If the child is on palliative care pathways, familiarize yourself with their care plan and clarify things at the daytime or handovers. There will be a palliative team who will be happy to take calls at any point. But this is also for your children who are quite fragile with many, many comorbidities. Definitely clarify in the handovers or daytime, by the way, is there scheming of care for this child? And that will trigger the consultants to have that conversation if there isn't, and we're all kind of thinking about it. Remember, your consultant will and must support you through this process. Definitely call your consultant in at all times with this. And don't forget to debrief, and anyone can debrief. So you will find, as you're the registrar, you might start to lead some debriefs, and lots of people might not have even had experience of being taught in debriefs. So I've got this quick tool which you can take a picture of. This is not a debrief talk, but it's just, if you could take a quick picture of it if you want, it's just a really nice thing to have in your pocket if you ever find yourself in a situation. It's just a really nice mnemonic, and you can remember how to quickly just touch upon some questions, and there you go, you've done your first debrief. Right, so safeguarding. So this, again, we have a specific talk about this, but when you first enter your trust, find out where the paperwork is. A lot of places might have safeguarding clerking performers, and you need to know where your body maps are. Some are involved in the performers, some you need to print out separately. So this is really useful. If you don't know, your nurse in charge definitely will. Be objective with what you're writing. This is another document. So you will actually everything, just document everything. Because if you are going to be called to a court hearing later, which I actually am, it's a good example of looking back in your documentation, be like, oh God, I was thinking that at that point, I remember now, but you didn't document it. And it's just really useful. If you don't document, it did not happen. So you really need to document. Yeah, I just can't, stress that point more so. Thorough examination, this should be the very, very thorough examination, and you want to write down even birthmarks and all. You want to include all of that in your examinations. Always talk to the child separately if possible. Always call your consultant, always discuss with your consultant. Any suspicious safeguarding case you need to discuss with your consultant. No consultant should, show you a tiff calling you about a safeguarding case. And try and set plans with juniors before starting. So what I mean by this is, we all know safeguarding cases can take up some time, particularly when they're, or most likely you're in the emergency department. So I would normally say, find out where your juniors are, go through the board, and actually see if they need to talk or discuss any patients with you, so they can just get on and start doing those jobs with those patients before you go into that safeguarding case scenario, okay? Obviously, you should still be accessible, but it just helps if you just kind of go through it and had a bit of a pre-plan. Right, clinics. So some of you I saw was a bit scared about clinics, and some of you were a bit excited about it. So it is a different way of working. It's kind of nice. You get to actually see well children, and you get to talk to them and see all these cases that you've only read about, and then you actually get to see them in clinic world. So don't be shy from dictating. It's a skill, so it's really good. Even if you are able to type, I would say try and do a few letters to dictate, because every trust is different, whether you dictate or write your letters. And actually, it's good. You don't know where you'll end up, and if you have to continue to dictate. And the more you do, the more you definitely get confident and listen to your voice, which always sounds weird. Work out a way of keeping a track of outstanding clinic drops. So if you sent that child for blood, the rule is always the responsible clinician should chase their own blood tests, etc. So make a spreadsheet, have that name down, have letter dictated, have letter double checked, have bloods to be chased or whatnot. And you can tick them off as you go along, and then you're on top of things. Try and dictate letters as soon as possible. Otherwise, let's not deny it, you'll forget those minor details, or that that last little point the parent said, oh, do you mind if you quickly mention to the GP so and so, and you said yes, and then you'll forget about it. And then ask your consultants to read over your letters. Definitely do this at the beginning of when you start to do writing your letters. I mean, normally with your clinics, you'll be attached to a consultant anyway, so you'll be able to always discuss each clinic patient with a consultant, whether it's straight after the clinic, straight after each patient, or straight after the clinic. But get them to read over your letters. And a new type of assessment you do as a registrar is something called discussion of correspondence, and get this ticked off at the same time while you read discuss your letters with them, because that is an assessment in itself that you need. Leadership opportunities. So again, I'm not going to go into massively into this. There's a talk, but we've talked about attend trust meetings, rapid reviews, strategy meetings, present your M&Ms, do QI projects, or help renew the standard of procedures, because that means you know the guidelines, you've helped produce them. Find your passion. So obviously in our supervisor meetings, the consultants generally ask, what are you interested in anyway? But I don't know if this is a bit mean to say, but they definitely try and push you more towards that, or link you up with the consultant who's in that known specialty. When you express, actually I'm interested in hematology, for example, then they'll say, okay, I'll try and pull you in some of the clinics with me, or let's try and see some of these patients together. They'll be very much more conscious of it and try and push you for a QI project and to do with that specialty, or pull you in a clinic with that specialty as well. Right, so general tips now. Nurses are your best friends, particularly the nurse in charge. You have to communicate with them. They are definitely 100% part of the team, or not even the most important part of the team. They know the patients better than you do sometimes, because they're not sometimes. The ward nurses, they're constantly with that patient. They know them well. Take their concerns seriously. That nurse in charge, ask them if you're unsure of the process. They have definitely been there longer than we have. They know the processes. They'll know how to go about things, or what's the most common thing they've seen other doctors do in the past, or where to find the resources, or who to call. If you're thinking of calling the boss, just call them. Definitely, if that doubts your mind, just do it. We've all been told off for not maybe calling the consultant. Very, very rarely someone will give you a bit of a grunt for calling them, and if they have, that's just quite unfair, because we're all ST4s and they should be expecting this. They're paid to be on call. Just call them if you have doubts. Document, which I've spoken about, and I said overlook juniors' documentation if possible. So you can't possibly look out. I don't mean when the juniors have clocked themselves to look over. What I mean is you will now have the luxury where your juniors will document for you when you're doing a senior review. And it's important to quickly just check over what they've documented. And the reason I say this is because your senior review is probably determining whether this patient gets to be discharged, or they're being admitted for so and so reasons. So it's really important, particularly if they're being discharged, that you make sure they can read what's in your mind in terms of, oh, they're being discharged because they're not an obstruction. These signs show that they're not an obstruction. But your SHO might not be reading the same thing that you're expressing, or what you've done in your examination findings. So overlook those key things to make sure that it reads nice. and can justify why you've discharged that patient. Make decisions early. This will come with experience, so don't worry. If you need time to think about it, it's okay. But if you know that child's being admitted, like they're on IV antibiotics, communicate with your nurse in charge so she can start saying decision to admit, getting the bed ready, etc. It just makes the patient experience much nicer. And actually, it's nice when things are anticipated and, run really nicely. And if you are unsure, communicate them with your nurse in charge. So be like, okay, I'm not quite sure what's going on with this child, but we're going to do some blood tests. And depending on the blood test, this will happen or this will happen. And then your nurse in charge understands, then everyone kind of understands the plan. And it's just easier for everyone. They understand what you're thinking. Be polite but assertive. As I said, people will be coming to you for basically everything, but you need to still keep your cool and not shout at someone or, take it out on them. They might not understand what you're thinking. And this is again where I'm saying communicate with them. Make your priorities clear, because not everyone understands that's the sicker child. Delegate, which we talked about. Don't take yourself out of the SHO role. Ask your consultant for feedback. So recently I had a talk on a completely different subject, but it came to light that the consultants themselves said, we don't outright give feedback because you don't know who's going to take it right or wrongly. So actually, we will only give feedback when people ask for it. And as a registrar, even more so, you want to know if you're doing the right thing or not. So ask your consultants for feedback and they will give it to you. Don't be afraid to tell your consultant what you need. So when you're calling them in the middle of the night, start with, hi, so-and-so, I'm calling you for advice. I'm calling because I want you to come in. I'm calling you regarding a sick child. So just tell them straight away what you need. You are not alone, as we've discussed. There are people all over and around you to help you. You know a lot more than you think. Trust me, you definitely do. Until you're doing it, you don't realize that you know a lot more than you think. And the idea is just to be safe and just enjoy it. I think it's literally what we've all envisaged, like being a doctor to be about, and being a registrar is actually that. So the hardest part is actually where you are now in ST3. There's all that anticipation. It's actually the scariest part. But when you're doing it, and you realize, hey, I can do this. So it's so much fun, and definitely enjoy it. And that's it. Good luck. You've got this. And any questions?